It started with a breeze and a fine. I was out on my front porch in late spring, sipping coffee and watching my golden retriever chase squirrels, when I heard the faint tinkle of my wind chime. It was an old copper spiral with stained glass birds, a gift from my late wife. Nothing loud, nothing tacky, just a soft musical rustle when the wind passed through. Then came the letter. Violation notice. Unauthorized decorative element. Audible wind chimes are not permitted. Fine. 100. At first I thought it was a mistake. Surely they sent the wrong address, right? But the letter had my name, my lot number, and the signature of, you guessed it, HOA President, Carol Blevins. Queen of Control. She lived 3 houses down in a tan brick ranch with not a single plant out of place. Her hedges were cut like military buzz cuts. Her lawn looked like it had been vacuumed. I walked to her house with the letter in hand, trying to keep it civil. She met me on her porch, wearing her signature Powerwalk tracksuit and plastic grin, Can. "I help you, Gerald?" she asked, even though she knew exactly why I was there. "I got this letter about my wind chime." "You can't be serious." She didn't miss a beat. "Wind chimes are considered a noise disturbance under HOA guidelines. Section 4, paragraph B. It's in the manual. You received it at closing." I had. It was a 67-page PDF, no one actually. Read. I skimmed it when I moved in, saw the usual trash days, lawn height, paint colors. Nothing about wind chimes. "They're not disturbing anyone," I said. "They barely make a sound." She smiled, that same patronizing smile I'd come to loathe. Well, one neighbor reported them, and if one neighbor is disturbed, that's enough. I wanted to ask who, but of course she wouldn't tell me. I've had that chime up for 3 years. No one said a word. Then consider this a delayed correction. Her tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't about the chime. It was about control, and I wasn't the first. 2 months ago, she fined a young couple for inappropriate garage curtain colors. Last fall, she dinged Mrs. Morales for excessive seasonal decor because she had 2 pumpkins and a scarecrow on her porch. She'd become the HOA's self-declared sheriff, handing out citations like candy, enforcing unwritten rules, and interpreting bylaws however she pleased. This was never about neighborhood standards. It was about domination. I took down the chime. For now. But it didn't sit right. That wind chime was the last gift my wife gave me before she passed. It hung on our porch in 3 different houses. When she got sick, she'd lie on the swing and listen to it. Said the sound was like her mother's. Garden back in Vermont. It calmed her. And now it was unauthorized noise. I called the HOA office the next day to file a formal appeal. Carol answered. "HOA office." "Carol, I'm appealing the citation." "You're welcome to file a form," she said, already dismissing me. "But the decision has been finalized. It's a closed matter." "No due process?" She paused, probably smiling on the other end. "There's no court here, Gerald, just compliance." Click. No due process, no real procedure, just compliance. That word echoed in my head all day. I walked around the block that afternoon talking to neighbors. Most were tight-lipped, scared of retribution. But one, Henry, a retired Army sergeant, invited me in and showed me a stack of violation notices he'd kept in a shoebox. 12 in 2 years. She got me for humming while mowing once," he said, chuckling grimly. "Claimed it was disruptive to community harmony." I stared at him. "You're kidding." I wish I was. That's when it clicked. Carol didn't care about rules. She cared about control, about bending the neighborhood to her vision. She ruled with pettiness, manipulation, and fear. And she always got away with it because no one pushed back. But I'm not built that way, especially when it comes to my wife's memory. So I went to the next HOA meeting. It was in the community center, gray walls, plastic chairs, a table of lukewarm coffee. Carol sat at the head of the table like it was Congress. There were maybe 10 residents in attendance. "Any new business?" she asked. I stood. "Yes." "My wind chime," she sighed theatrically. "That matter has been resolved. I want it back. And I want an explanation why it was targeted when it caused no harm. Because it violated code." I pulled out a copy of the HOA guidelines, printed, highlighted, and tabbed. There is no clause about decorative chimes, only a vague note about excessive sound disturbances. She crossed her arms. One neighbor complained. Then, "I want that complaint documented, and I want a hearing." Several residents perked up at that. Carol blinked. "That's not how we do things here." "Exactly, and it should be." Silence hung in the air. No one had ever spoken to her that way, at least not in public. Her expression tightened. She looked around, realizing people were watching. Meeting adjourned. Next morning, I found a second violation posted on my door. Unauthorized confrontation of HOA board. $200 fine. I laughed, out loud. This woman was deranged. I paid the fine. Not because I accepted guilt, but because I was preparing something bigger. That night, I walked into my garage. My wife and I built wine chimes together, years ago, when we lived in the mountains. We used old silverware, copper pipes, soda cans, spoons, keys. She said each one had its own song. That's when the idea hit. She silenced one wind chime. What would she do if there were 300? Want to know what happens when the HOA queen hears her own rules turned against her? You're going to love Chapter 2. Drop a comment if you've ever been fined for something ridiculous. And don't forget to hit that subscribe if you're ready to see karma served in 300-part harmony. You ever hit a point where you stop being shocked and start planning? That second violation did it for me. Not because of the $200 fine, but because of what it meant. I'd challenged her publicly, and she was retaliating. This wasn't enforcement. It was war. And the best part? She just gave me proof. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anger. From thinking. I sat at my kitchen table with every page of the HOA handbook printed and laid out in front of me like a criminal profiler building. A case. I was looking for cracks, gaps, hidden weaknesses. I'd never been a lawyer, but I knew how to read quietly and listen for the lies behind rules. By sunrise, I'd marked every vague clause with a red pen. By noon, I had an outline, and by dinner time, I had something better than a plan. I had a legal chessboard. See, while Carol was busy flexing imaginary power and handing out citations, she forgot one thing. The HOA office, it wasn't technically private property. It sat on a shared-use community plot, funded by homeowner dues, governed by mixed-use maintenance clauses. I paid for that land. So did every neighbor she'd harassed. And more importantly, nothing. In the rules prohibited decorative items placed for seasonal or celebratory community purposes. And if you think I'm exaggerating, here's the direct quote. Shared community spaces may host temporary, non-destructive decorations in the spirit of community expression. Oh, Carol, you shouldn't have written it that way. The next few days, I went quiet. No more meetings, no emails. That's how you do it. You don't yell into a storm. You wait for it to pass so they stop watching. That's when you build. I started collecting wind chimes. Everywhere. Online bulk orders, garage sales, Craigslist pickups. I told people I was decorating for a wind festival. No one questioned it. People love weird niche hobbies. I got creative, too. I made some from bike chains, hollow shell casings, silver spoons, driftwood, copper wire, curtain rods, bottle caps, tin cookie cutters. Each one made a different sound. Some soft, some sharp, some deep like church bells, some tinny like laughter in a storm drain. By the end of the week, I had 312 wind chimes boxed up in my garage. Every time I opened the door, it sounded like I was keeping a choir hostage. Then something unexpected happened. Support. First, it was Henry, the retired vet down the street. He stopped by and noticed what I was working on. I braced for judgment. He looked at the dozens of wind chimes hanging from rafters and said, "Need help hanging these?" That opened the floodgates. Turns out Carol had ticked off more people than I thought. A single mom fined for chalk art on her driveway. A Korean couple cited for foreign holiday decor. A teen boy threatened with fines for painting his skateboard ramp in the driveway. They were tired. But they weren't helpless. So I formed a crew. We called ourselves the Harmony Committee. Our goal? To restore balance to the community. Poetically, legally. We made a schedule. We scoped the HOA office. We noted which posts, trees, fences, light poles, and overhangs could support weight. We measured breeze direction and average wind speed at different times of day. We even tested noise dispersion from different corners of the lot. This wasn't a prank. It was a message. And we were crafting it like a symphony. 2 nights before the strike, I printed laminated cards with one sentence. This installation is part of a community expression project under HOA Guideline 7B, Community Decoration, Clause. We would zip tie one to every group of chimes. One neighbor, Martha, even knitted yarn decorations for some of the poles, gave the installation a warm, almost joyful feel. We weren't being destructive, we were being undeniable, and the final touch? I had my wife's wind chime, the one that started it all, cleaned, polished, and tuned. It would be placed dead center, right outside the HOA door on a custom stand with a plaque that said, "Dedicated to Harmony, in memory of sound that matters." The night before deployment, I couldn't sleep. Again, not from nerves, from anticipation. I wasn't just doing this for revenge. I was doing it to flip the script, to show that silence, when used as a weapon, could be shattered with art, community, and sound. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for everyone Carol had silenced. At 5:03 a.m. on a breezy Thursday morning, we began. A dozen of us moved in like calm ninjas. Garden gloves, headlamps, zip ties. We worked fast and silently, a crew of citizens restoring justice through aluminum and wind. By 6:20 a.m., we were done. Over 300 wind chimes, swayed gently across the HOA office property. Every tree branch, every fence pole, every overhang, even the bike rack. The sun rose, the breeze picked up, and the entire block came alive with soft, clinking, chiming, beautiful chaos. No 2 chimes sounded the same. It wasn't dissonance. It was a harmony made from resistance. It was the sound of the neighborhood saying, "We're done being quiet." Carol arrived at 7:12 a.m. She pulled into the parking lot, paused in her car for a full 30 seconds, then slammed the door and marched toward the office with a face redder than a fire truck. The chimes got louder as she moved, like they were mocking her. She spun in place, trying to take it all in. Wind chimes on the mailbox, wind chimes above the door, wind chimes hanging from the damn flagpole. I stepped out from behind the shrubs with a coffee in hand, nodded. "Morning." "Carol," her voice cracked. What is this?" "A community expression installation," I said. "All legal under your favorite clause, 7B. I didn't authorize this. You don't have to. It's shared community space. I checked, twice." She stormed toward the door, yanked on the handle, and the wind chime above her head sang the sweetest note. My wife's chime. She froze, looked up, read the plaque. Her jaw twitched. "I'm calling code enforcement," she hissed. "You do that." "I already did. Left them coffee and muffins." She spent the rest of the morning on the phone, pacing, yelling, flailing her arms like she was fighting invisible bees. Meanwhile, neighbors gathered. They brought folding chairs. Some brought breakfast. One guy live-streamed it. It got over 200,000 views by that night. Title: HOA President loses it over wind chimes, gets schooled by neighborhood. She tried to remove some of them herself, snapped 2 zip ties and broke a nail. Someone started clapping. She stopped. Eventually, code enforcement arrived. They reviewed everything, read the signs, took pictures, walked the property. Verdict? No. Violations present. Decorations are legal under current code. No noise ordinance breached. Carol just stood there, stunned, and for once, speechless. That night, someone left a wind chime on my porch, then another and another. By Sunday, I had 14 new ones from neighbors. A few even said, "Thank you for giving us our voice back." And me? I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, my wife's chime singing in the breeze, and for the first time in weeks, I felt peace, real peace, the kind you can't fine away. You know what happens when you strip a tyrant of their silence? They scream. That's what Chapter 3 was. Not mine, hers. The morning after the wind chime installation, Carol Blevins submitted 3 formal complaints to city code enforcement, claimed property vandalism, and called an emergency HOA board meeting. But here's the thing about petty people with paper power. When their rules get turned against them, they panic. And Carol was panicking loud. She started with an email blast to all residents. The recent display at the HOA office was not sanctioned and may violate noise ordinances and property rights. We are investigating who is responsible and will pursue disciplinary actions. She didn't sign it. President Carol Blevins. She signed it. Acting Executive of Community Order. I kid you not. What she didn't expect was how fast people turned on her. The video from that morning had gone viral, not just in the neighborhood, but across the city. News blogs picked it up. Headlines like, "Wind Chimes of Freedom, HOA President Snaps Over Peaceful Protest." "Tyrant Tries to Silence Widow's Chime, Gets Symphony Instead." The internet was laughing, and Carol couldn't stand it. By the time the emergency HOA meeting rolled around that weekend, the community center was packed, not the usual 10 chairs. It was standing room only. People who had never shown up to anything came with lawn chairs, kids, dogs, even snacks. The mood wasn't angry. It was curious and electric. And Carol? She walked in late, hair perfect, binder, tight in hand, face set like stone. She took the mic and tried to regain control. "Thank you all for attending," she started, tone clipped. "I'd like to address the recent unauthorized installation of sound-producing objects on community property." Someone from the back yelled, "You mean the celebration?" Laughter broke out. Carol scowled. This is not a joke, but it was. It was a joke now, and she was the punchline. She launched into a speech about standards, order, noise violations, property maintenance, all, while the faint sound of chimes from outside the windows filled the room with soft harmony. Poetic, right? She pointed at me. "In front of everyone." "You, Gerald, you led this." I stood, calm, direct. "I followed the rules you ignored. Community decoration clause, shared property use, no permanent fixtures, no damage done, just sound." Someone clapped, then 2 more, then the whole room. Carol tried to yell over them. "This isn't allowed!" But she couldn't compete with applause and the subtle tinkling of 300 voices on the wind. She finally snapped. "You think this is funny? You're all breaking order. You're mocking the very rules that keep this neighborhood civilized." Woman 2 rose up, stood. "Carol, I've lived here 10 years. You fined me for garden gnomes. You threatened me over a pride flag. You told my kids their hopscotch chalk was graffiti. You're not protecting anything? You're controlling everyone." More nods. More people standing. Carol looked like she was shrinking behind the podium. One guy called out, "Can we vote her out?" Everyone froze. Because we'd all wondered that question for years, and now someone said it out loud. I stepped forward, holding the HOA charter I'd printed days earlier. "Section 9, Clause E," I said clearly. "Any sitting board member may be removed by a majority vote at a public HOA meeting if quorum is met." Everyone stared at Carol. She dropped her pen. By the end of that night, we had quorum. And the votes. Carol Blevins, removed by a vote of 86 to 12. Her last words at that meeting, "You've all destroyed what this neighborhood stood for." My reply, "We just reminded it what it was supposed to be." The wind chimes stayed up for 2 more weeks. Then we took them down, together, as a community. Carefully, respectfully. But we left one, mine, my wife's. Right outside the HOA office door, now renamed the Community Welcome Center, a new board was elected, younger, more inclusive. The first motion passed. Any peaceful decorative element that promotes community spirit shall be encouraged, not penalized. They called it the Harmony Amendment. Sometimes karma doesn't knock. Sometimes it whispers on through copper and wind. They thought it would end with a meeting, that removing Carol Blevins from the HOA presidency would silence everything, tie the whole saga up in a neat little bow. But justice doesn't just knock and leave. It lingers, echoes, and in this case, it chimed. After the vote that removed her from office, Carol vanished, literally disappeared from public view. She was no longer walking her perfectly groomed poodle down the street at 6:15 a.m., no more morning clipboard inspections, no SUV parked across driveways watching from behind tinted glass. Gone. But she didn't leave quietly. 2 days after the vote, a cease and desist letter arrived at my door from Carol's personal attorney, claiming the wind chimes I'd installed had caused emotional distress, violated noise ordinances, led to irreparable damage to her community reputation. My lawyer, a friend of mine from college, who'd followed the whole ordeal with popcorn in hand, looked at it and laughed. Her try, he said. This is the legal equivalent of a sore loser throwing a tantrum in Latin. Still, I prepared for more backlash. The wind chimes stayed, but I upgraded the placement, not for confrontation, but commemoration. Each chime now bore a name, not of defiance, but of the people Carol had targeted. The Rodriguez family, fined out of their home over unregistered bikes. Mrs. Ellington, penalized for planting lilies outside the regulation flowerbed zone. Tyler and Jason, forced to remove their rainbow mailbox. I tracked them all down, spoke with each family. Some cried when they heard what I'd done. Others laughed and offered to mail me their old violation slips as keepsakes. By the end of the week, we had 300 names, 300 moments of pettiness, 300 reasons why silence is never the answer. The new HOA board, to their credit, didn't try to erase the chimes. They embraced them. Board President Danielle Chin, a young architect who'd just moved in last year, approached me after their first meeting. "We're calling it the Harmony Project," she said. "We think it should stay." They even installed a small bronze plaque on the sidewalk near the chimes, dedicated to every voice silenced by bureaucracy. May they always be heard. I didn't expect to cry when I read it, but I did, and I wasn't the only one. The story didn't just stay in the neighborhood. A local news anchor picked it up, then a national blog, then a podcast that covers community justice stories. Interviewed me in my garage, surrounded by leftover chime materials and notes of appreciation from families I'd never met. The title of the episode? When the Wind Fought Back. People started mailing in their own wind chimes, asking us to hang them. Some sent photos of their dogs, their gardens, their homes, things they'd lost because of an HOA gone rogue. We added a few more rows, then a few more. The sound became iconic, a landmark. Visitors would drive through our neighborhood just to walk past the wall of chimes. Kids would run their fingers along the strings and giggle as they created a tinkling chorus of rebellion. It wasn't noise anymore. It was memory, story, soul. Carol, meanwhile, wasn't done sulking. Word got around she'd tried to file for defamation, but no lawyer wanted the case. Turns out it's hard to claim libel when everything's true and on video. Her house went on the market a month later. No one said goodbye, no farewell party, no tears, no casseroles, just a for sale sign. And then, poof, the same woman who once fined a man for leaving his trash bin out past 8 a.m. was gone with the Tuesday garbage truck. Some said she moved to Arizona. Others heard rumors of her trying to join another HOA board in a retirement community. I didn't care. She wasn't my problem anymore. But something deeper happened in the wake of it all. The neighborhood changed. People who'd avoided eye contact. At the mailbox now waved. Yards that used to be regulation beige burst into color. Sunflowers, flags, hand-painted fences. No more yellow violation slips taped to doors. No more whispers about being watched. It felt free. One evening, I walked past the Chimes with my dog Max, who Carol once labeled excessive bark hazard, and a little girl tugged her mom's hand. "Is that the man who made the wind music?" The mom smiled at me. "That's him." The girl waved. "Thank you, wind man." Max barked once. Approval. A few months later, at the HOA's spring meeting, Danielle made an announcement. They were launching a community expression grant, using the leftover funds Carol had hoarded to help residents decorate their homes, host block parties, and support local artists. "You turned protest into purpose," she told me afterward. "We're just following your lead. Sometimes revenge is loud, sometimes it's calculated, but sometimes it's just beautiful. Like copper bells in the breeze, like the sound of freedom echoing through a neighborhood finally wide awake." 3 months after Carol Blevins was ousted from her self-made HOA throne, the wind chimes still sang. Every morning, like clockwork, as the sun rose over Juniper Lane, the breeze would catch those rows of copper, glass, and steel. And what once began as a protest now sounded like freedom. The story had gone further than I ever imagined. A local paper called it the Suburban Symphony. The video of Carol screaming about illegal air instruments had passed 2 million views. Someone even turned it into a remix on TikTok, which I'll admit slapped, but viral fame wasn't what mattered. What mattered was what happened here. After Carol's official resignation, which came with zero apology and a 6-line statement blaming a toxic online mob, the HOA board scheduled a community-wide election for the first time in over a decade. Every position was contested, and neighbors showed up in force. People who had once stayed quiet, afraid of being targeted, now stood on their porches with homemade signs that said, "Hoa for the people," and "No more silence." Betty Warner, the elderly woman who once got fined for having a wreath in February, won treasurer in a landslide. Danielle Chin, the architect who fought to protect the Chimes, became president with near-unanimous votes. I didn't run for anything. I didn't need a title. But that didn't stop them from naming me the official community engagement advisor. Basically, the guy who got to say, "Maybe don't do that," when someone got too carried away with decorations or lawn flamingos. It was symbolic, and that was fine by me. The real power wasn't in the titles. It was in the people finally finding their voice. The first order of business, restoring peace and rights. Every fine Carol issued in the last 24 months was wiped. Every lien she filed reversed. And perhaps most poetic of all, the HOA's new office, which had moved out of Carol's converted basement, now shared property lines with the Harmony Wall. Yes, the wind chimes. And since they were technically on HOA property, a strip of shared land adjacent to the mailboxes, the board voted to officially maintain them as a historical community feature. That meant they weren't just tolerated, they were preserved, funded, protected. Part of the HOA budget. Carol had fined me $200 for a wind chime. Now the HOA was paying $500 annually to maintain 300 of them. Tell me karma doesn't wear wind bells. The chimes drew attention far beyond the neighborhood. Other communities started writing in. Some asked for guidance on HOA reform. Some wanted to know how to install their own harmony wall. I ended up putting together a downloadable template and wiring diagram for large-scale wind chime displays. Danielle and I started hosting virtual info sessions, jokingly called Chime and Punishment. Even a documentary filmmaker reached out. He'd done pieces on small-town justice before and wanted to include our story in a series called Tiny Empires. We agreed, on one condition. He had to interview the families who'd been forced out under Carol's reign. This wasn't just my story. It was theirs, too. As for Carol, she moved across the state. Word has it she tried to join the board of another HOA in a gated community. Didn't work out. Someone on the interview panel Googled her name and pulled up a freeze frame of her shouting, "You'll hear from my lawyer!" in front of my chimes. She didn't get the gig. The biggest surprise, though? How many neighbors came by just to say thank you? People I hadn't spoken to in months, years. Some had stayed silent when things got bad. Others had been just as afraid as I was in the beginning. But now they brought cookies, helped repaint the fence, donated to the Harmony Wall's upkeep fund. One guy even brought me a handmade wind chime carved from driftwood. "It's my old screen door hinge," he said, smiling. Thought it deserved to keep singing. Peace didn't come all at once, but slowly, surely, Juniper Lane found its rhythm again. You could hear it in the laughter of kids riding scooters down the sidewalk. You could see it in the gardens bursting with unauthorized flowers. You could feel it in the breeze that carried the chimes. A soft, persistent reminder that beauty can be resistance, and that petty tyrants always underestimate the power of a quiet voice multiplied by hundreds. One morning, as I stood by the sea, Harmony Wall sipping my coffee, a young couple walking their dog paused to admire it. Their dog, a big, silly lab mix, sniffed Max. My own mutt once labeled a nuisance under Carol's rules. They looked at me. "Did you really install all these?" the woman asked. I nodded. "With some help?" She smiled. "It's incredible. You turned HOA revenge into art." Her husband added, "We just moved here last month because of this." I blinked. "Seriously?" He shrugged. "We figured any neighborhood with wind chimes this loud probably doesn't tolerate bullies." I laughed. Fair assumption. The Harmony Wall still stands, and when storms roll through and the wind howls loudest, the sound is deafening. Not chaos, not noise, but remembrance. Every chime a voice that once whispered, "This isn't fair," now singing, "Not anymore." They tried to silence us with fines, but now the whole street sings.